Right. Okay. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Natalia. If you don't know me, I'm an aquatic invasive species educator with Illinois Indiana Sea Grant, and I help also to facilitate the Invasive Crayfish Collaborative, or ICC for short. And if you don't know what the ICC is, it's an initiative focused on improving the collective management of invasive crayfish in the Great Lakes. So we bring together folks from all over the Great Lakes region to advance how we manage and communicate about invasive crayfish. And we also send out monthly newsletters highlighting recent crayfish literature and news. We host webinars like this one about new crayfish research and programs. We collaborate with other organizations on various projects, which we'll hear about today. And we also just mostly in general help promote responsible crayfish practices to support and protect our amazing native crayfish species. So before we begin, I wanted to give you a few links that can help you connect with the ICC. Our main website is invasivecrayfish.org, and it's basically our one-stop shop for crayfish news, tools, events, and updates. So you could check that out if you're interested. And if you want to be a part of our crayfish community, you can head to invasivecrayfish.org/join, and then there you'll find our subscription form. And you'll be added to our Google group, which is basically where we send all of our newsletters, we share our webinar invites, and we have, I guess, fast, helpful conversations with crayfish partners across the Great Lakes using that group. And then we also have a good variety of other interesting webinars that we recorded in the past. So if you're interested in checking those out, you can follow the last link, invasivecrayfish.org/webinar archives. And then finally, if you have any questions, any feedback, if you want to come out and talk about your work at a ICC webinar, you can email me at chicago.illinois.edu. And I think Carter is kindly adding these links to the chat. So thank you so much, Carter. All right, so let's talk about the focus of today's webinar, which kind of relates to one of the sneakier ways that non-native crayfish can make their way into our local waterways, which is the classroom. So live crayfish, they're often used in science education to teach concepts like ecology, anatomy, or just to simply spark curiosity as a classroom pet. And these experiences with crayfish can be extremely powerful for students. They boost student engagement and participation, and it's just a unique way for students to learn. However, the use of live crayfish in classrooms can come with risks, especially when using non-native crayfish species. So past research actually has found that some teachers release their crayfish into the wild after their use, which can then start an invasion and impact the ecological integrity of their local waterways. So given all of this, we at Illinois Indiana Sea Grant understand that there's a clear need for more guidance and just for more resources to support responsible crayfish learning in the classroom. So to help with this and address these kinds of concerns, we partnered with Engaging Every Student to create a Great Lakes-focused, standards-aligned science curriculum called Investigating Crayfish and Freshwater Ecosystems. And this curriculum includes engaging lessons about the importance of native crayfish, the risks of invasive species, and just the broader connections to Great Lakes ecosystems. And our hope with this is that we can, or by providing educators with the right tools, students will be able to walk away with a better understanding of why crayfish matter and how they can be part of protecting local wildlife. So to share more about this curriculum and how to bring it to life in your classroom or your program, we're excited to welcome the author of the curriculum, Rick Reynolds. Rick is an author and has been a passionate educator for over 30 years. He creates educational resources with partners such as NOAA and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service through Engaging Every Student, the organization that he founded in 2009 with the mission to help make the learning process more compelling and meaningful. With a passion for environmental education, Rick is an enthusiastic trainer of fellow educators and helps all ages connect with nature. He has authored or co-authored 20 books and curriculum guides, as well as hundreds of lesson plans and multimedia resources. He enjoys exploring the great outdoors with his wife and collaborator, Krista, as well as gardening, tennis, music, and community service. So thanks so much for being here, Rick.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much for the nice introduction. And it was just so much fun to team up with you in this project. Natalia, you're just a wonderful collaborator, and the whole team really helped to make this new curriculum just be a resource that we're proud to share. And it builds on the work that we've been doing in the Northwest for many years through the River Mile Network, which our colleague Eric Larson, joining us today from the University of Illinois, has been part of, our supervising scientist for many years. So we're thrilled that Eric was able to join today too. And it's really been a team effort with so many different partners developing this program over a number of years. And now we have the new Great Lakes focused curriculum that ties in all your, well, not all, but many of your local species and really kind of highlights the issues that'll be most important to the educators and students in the Great Lakes region. So, with that, I'll just dive right in and give everyone basically a quick overview of all the lessons in the curriculum, so that if you're an educator or you're somebody who works with educators, you can just kind of hit the ground running when you start looking at this curriculum that's all freely available online. And so the goal of the curriculum is really to get the students thinking critically about crayfish and freshwater ecosystems. We found that they're just incredibly charismatic creatures. When the kids especially see a live crayfish, like without exception, they're all super enthusiastic and excited to learn more. We're really focused on preparing educators so that they feel comfortable participating in the invasive crayfish collaborative study. So this is something working with scientists to be able to share the data that they can collect. We know that the community scientists out there, although they're not professional, if we get enough of them collecting data, this is just super useful for the researchers. It tends to average out, even if, let's say, there's a misidentification, it just gets smoothed out in the data. And you all have the scientists that can help with that too. So all of the lessons are aligned to the next generation science standards and the Common Core state standards. They're also designed to meet the Center for Great Lakes literacy principles as well. So with this first lesson, we're looking at the Intro to Crayfish and Freshwater Ecosystems. And this adapt crayfish is this curriculum. I'm getting the words twisted up today, but the idea is for it to be very adaptable for multiple grades. And so you could do it with students as young as second grade all the way up through high school. I've seen it work well with all of those ages. And so each lesson has a variety of different activities. One of them is a crayfish trivia activity, which can be kind of like a pretest if you just want to see what kids know about crayfish already. Or it can be used as a game later on in the lesson. But questions to get the kids thinking about what they know about crayfish and freshwater ecosystems. Then we suggest they do a little mini presentation about one of the organisms, so they can choose an animal or a plant or another type of organism. There's presentations that go with the curriculum, so you can give the kids just kind of a quick overview of some of the organisms and how they're interrelated in the ecosystem. And then they can choose and present. So here's an example with rainbow trout here. And when I do this, I usually have the kids all in a circle, and they just do this mini presentation, which of course is also meeting Common Core standards. They've done some writing, and now they're presenting. It's important to get that practice worked into the school day. And now they're sharing about an organism they're excited about, all in a circle. And then after you've all gone around in the circle, then you can create a web of life, which is a classic project learning tree activity that I've been doing for literally 30 years, and it always works. I've done it so many different times, so many different ecosystems. Basically, you start out with a yarn ball, and I play the role of the sun. And then I ask the students who can use my energy from the sun. And so the kids raise their hand if they're a producer. We've talked about producers quick. And so now I've passed the energy over to producer, and now the other kids are thinking about who they might interact with as that plants, whether it's algae or um, some other plant. And now they're thinking about like the flow of energy through the ecosystem, but also other interactions. So I suggest they think about who might be shelter for other organisms, or what other ways could they be interconnected. So in that process, you get this nice web of life. There are also nonfiction readings that you can share with students to give them a little more background knowledge. Again, you're meeting Common Core standards. You don't need to do reading just at one point of the day and science at another point of the day. It can all be integrated. So there are a lot of resources to help do that. We have a reading for younger students too that they can also color and tie in the important concepts like biodiversity and a community, populations, etc. Um, and again, there's this supporting presentation too to hit a lot of these key concepts that can be done in an interactive way. And then for kind of a closing activity, we suggest the kids create a different type of model, just a visual model showing arrows connected to the different food sources. I suggest using green arrows for plant food sources, red arrows for animal food sources, and then brown for decomposition. And so there's examples of visual models in the presentation and in the curriculum that you can share, and they can make just like a nice visual model showing a freshwater ecosystem. And of course, the crayfish play really important roles that we hit in the presentation, and so all that can kind of be reinforced through the creation of these different models. Um, so I'm going to keep going. That's kind of a quick overview of lesson one. But if there are questions, Natalia told me I could talk for 40 to 45 minutes, which is kind of a lot. So if there are any questions, feel free to stop me and I can pause along the way. Otherwise, I'll just dive on into lesson two. And I should just mention that at the end of every lesson, there are a lot of different enrich extend activities. So let's say you are working with an advanced class or you have some advanced students, there are other projects you can start them on, ways to bring in math and other concepts. So look for that in all the lessons. And we will be sharing a link to the curriculum at the end. So with lesson two, we go into the concept of an invasive crayfish. They have huge impacts on the environment. I'm sure you're all aware, and how they can change the communities. So one activity for this is this mystery of the changing crayfish populations. And so with this activity, the students get some data on different species that are in the ecosystem and how their populations are changing over time. They can graph that data, analyze it, think about what might be causing these changes based on the scenario. And another activity is an invasive species project where they choose a species that sounds interesting, can be an animal or a plant, and then again do a short presentation about it to the class and think about how those invasive species are impacting the environment and how we might be able to help the problem. Again, lots of enrich extend activities, but so I have time to go through all the lessons. I'm just going to keep cruising through. The third lesson gets into crayfish adaptations, just fascinating creatures that we suggest if you can bring in live crayfish, super interesting. It is possible to even bring live native crayfish to the classroom if your permits allow. I'll talk more later about getting a permit to do scientific data collection. But what's been nice here in the Northwest is the teachers, once they're added to our permits out here, they can bring native crayfish back, and we found that they're even trainable, which is just fascinating. So the kids really want to know everything about the crayfish once they've interacted with them. This one third grade class in my old neighborhood found that if they fed them in the morning when they came in, after that, the crayfish would just be waving their chelipeds at the kids when they walked in the morning, ready to be fed. So that's pretty interesting. These creatures, but even if you don't have live crayfish, just preserved ones can be very interesting. I found when I don't have live ones, I just get frozen ones from Walmart is a good backup plan. Or Eric Larson's here. Other people work with crayfish a lot. You might be able to team up with a local colleague that has them preserved. Because you can talk about this stuff. The kids can make art projects with crayfish, but no substitute for the real thing. Um, this is an example of an early elementary student making a model of a crayfish. It's very fun to do with clay or Play-Doh, and then you can point to the different structures with arrows and add labels. So this kind of annotated model is a great way to tie in some writing, reinforce the concepts, and so much fun to just make a crayfish. But for older kids, we do have external anatomy sheets in the curriculum that you'll see. There's a version with the crayfish labeled. We suggest passing out the one that doesn't have any labels after you've kind of run through the presentation and give them a quick overview of the different structures. Then give them the blank one and see what they remember. Just let them kind of do their best, and then you can pass out the one that's labeled. There's also a glossary, basically a list of all the terms, the structures, and what they are, definitions of them. So you could do three steps, is how I've done it in the past, where you just kind of have the blank one, pass out the terms. Now they have some clues that they can fill in, and then finally you can give them the completed diagram here to fill in. Then they can compare adaptations. They can look at a crayfish compared to another organism and think about what the similarities and differences are. We have a little different type of Venn diagram in the curriculum that you can use for that. Um, we suggest having the students create their own species. So now they've been learning about freshwater ecosystems, how these amazing structures on crayfish help them survive. Things like their antennae and their 10 legs and their exoskeletons. And there's a lot of fascinating stuff here. And that's great food for thought for designing their own organisms. So here's one with again, a early elementary student did this. You can provide natural materials, again, clay or Play-Doh, and then just let them be creative. I think this is a photosynthesizing animal that this third grader came up with. For the fourth lesson, we get into the different native and invasive crayfish species that you have in the Great Lakes area. There are different cards that go into the roles that crayfish can play, including their importance as food, their prey for so many different species, their roles as consumers, which in the case of invasive crayfish can become a real problem, but often with the native species, it's just a super important recycling of those nutrients. If there's dead leaves, dead animals in the water bodies, they will use up all that food, keep the water bodies clean, and then so many animals will recycle those nutrients throughout the ecosystem. That's just a couple examples of the role cards that you'll see. Then the students can have discussions about different ways to monitor crayfish. We kind of step you through that process. There are cards that you can print out that are all kind of the key native and invasive crayfish species you're most likely to find in the region. So there's a first page that's kind of an overview of all of them, and then the next page is focus on the physical descriptions, the behaviors, and more interesting information about those species. Here's a few of them. A few of my favorites: the calico crayfish in the Great Lakes area, the northern Clearwater crayfish, and then one of my absolute favorites is and I want to make sure I don't say the name wrong, the devil crayfish. Um, it was being blocked on my screen, but check out those chelipeds. Look at that color, and anything that's, devilish, you're going to get the attention of the kids too. So see if you can find some of those natives out there. One of the invasives you're likely to find is the rusty crayfish. This is one that we're having a big problem with in the Northwest now too. They traced it back to one particular school that was studying native crayfish through these FOSS kits every year for a number of years. They were releasing the crayfish into the river instead of euthanizing them the way they were supposed to, and now they're completely taking over part of Central Oregon, sadly. And so this is something that we like to share as a story, just to kind of remind folks, if you have live crayfish, do not, under any circumstances, release them out into the wild. And that goes for native species too. That is something I've learned from our supervising scientist, Eric Larson, that they can sometimes carry diseases. And so even though you might have a native species, if you put it in a little different place, you can end up causing unintended harm. So if you do have any live crayfish out, they either stay with you for life or they get cooked up for dinner or something other than moved around. Um, with rusty crayfish, the most likely reason in the Great Lakes they're taking over is because of live bait buckets. So that's another thing to watch out for. They are native to the Ohio River Basin, so not too far away, but they really are causing a lot of trouble in the Great Lakes now. They're opportunistic feeders that can eat, just about any living or dead plant matter. Very aggressive. There's been some interesting research. A colleague of Eric Larson's shared a presentation through the River Mile Network where she put like Fight Club together with rusty crayfish and other species, and it's just very interesting to see how aggressive they can be and how they can just kind of take over against other species when they go head to head. And they tend to just destroy all the aquatic plants needed by other species. And so we tend to see this like big spike in rusty crayfish and the other invasives, and then kind of a crash once all the resources are eaten up. Some of the other ones to watch out for, we also have a problem with red swamp crayfish in the Northwest. Some folks consider this the most invasive animal in the world. Bright red, long chelipeds, and kind of a longer body, so watch out for that. If it's bright red, good chance it's the red swamp crayfish. Marbled crayfish is another troublemaker over there. And then our native signal crayfish from the Northwest is actually invading the Great Lakes and lots of other places around the world, Japan, Europe, and other places. The species is not only more aggressive than natives, but it can spread plague and disease. And so that's one to watch out for. They tend to have a lighter colored patch at the joint of their chela. So if you see that lighter color patch, most likely a signal crayfish. That's why they call it a signal crayfish. But sometimes you don't see that with the juveniles. They don't have bumps. So like red swamp crayfish has the tubercules. And rusty crayfish will have these bumps all over them too. Signal crayfish are quite smooth. Some of the other impacts, I mentioned outcompeting native crayfish for food and habitat. There's been a lot of research done about this. Reducing amphibian fish, mollusk, and plant populations. Um, you'll see, if you start looking, you'll see a lot of research being done about this. Um, how they can cause erosion. So red swamp crayfish, some of the other invasives tend to dig burrows with their chelipeds, and they're stirring up lots of sediment. So that can really not only cause erosion, but also degrade water quality. Once you have a lot more sediment in the water column, many of you probably know this, it's going to soak up more sunlight, which is going to raise the water temperature, make dissolved oxygen levels go down. So it just kind of has this cascade of negative impacts. And then just destroying the habitat, the places where these other species need to live. Um, and negatively impacting fishermen too, because this will go through all of the ecosystem, the different species humans use for food, those impacts on water quality, whether it's increased turbidity from stirring up the sediments or other impacts. They just cause so many problems. And now we're finding they can even spread disease. There's some interesting research about invasive crayfish and how they could potentially lead to more mosquitoes. So this is kind of a new area of research happening now. And just one more thing to think about, as if you didn't already have enough to think about already. But it's just interesting to see with climate change, at least here in the Northwest, we're seeing some of these invasives are becoming more and more of a problem. The red swamp crayfish has a lot of eggs. It's like between 500 and 1,000 eggs per female when they have eggs. And they used to only do that once a season, but now we're seeing that they can do that twice a season. And so we're really getting this like exponential growth. Compared to the native species, they tend to only be able to do that once in a season. So just one more thing to be thinking about out there. Some of the other ways they spread are through the pet trade. We found some invasive red swamp crayfish in Idaho. First time they had been discovered there, to my knowledge. And that was linked back to the pet trade. Just sometimes the pet shops will get species that they don't really want, and they'll think they're doing everybody a favor by just letting them go. And it could cause a lot of problems. Bait, like I mentioned before, is a big issue. So make sure you spread the word not to dump bait buckets. Food, having live crayfish can be nice. They're delicious. They taste just like lobster, but sometimes they don't all get cooked up, and if they get released, cause a big problem. By the way, I'll just mention that a really wonderful way to solve the invasive crayfish problem is to cook them all up. So we always ask the students to bring ice with them when they're collecting in the field, and they can put the invasives on ice. They'll just kind of get stunned, go to sleep. You can put them in the freezer when you get back home, and that is a great way to solve the problem. If you do cook them up, it is nice to cool them off first. If you freeze them, they're not going to feel pain if you put them in boiling water. You can also just do mechanical death quickly, but please don't boil crayfish alive. They have done some research on this, and it's quite an agonizing, slow way to go. They're delicious, but doing it humanely is much better. Aquaculture. So another way they've been spreading out here in Oregon, and I believe also in the Great Lakes, is just they brought them in for food, and especially species like red swamp crayfish, they can actually go over land pretty well, and so they've been able to escape from the aquaculture facilities and go check out other ponds and all. Natalia mentioned before classrooms. So basically, this has become a big problem. They're actually banned in Washington State now for use in classrooms, the invasive crayfish. That's another reason why people like participating in this crayfish study we're doing out here, because the folks can still use crayfish, but they're doing it safely, where they're not bringing invasive live crayfish into the classroom. So it's considered best practice just to freeze or keep reusing them every year. They can be kept alive for quite a while. Um, and so without further ado, I want to start getting into collecting reliable crayfish data. So this is a lesson in the curriculum. And again, we have the species. So we suggest, introducing the students to the species you're most likely to find in your area. You might talk to some experts if you're in Illinois, maybe talk to Eric Larson or someone on his team to know, exactly which species you're most likely to find, and be ready for that. You can go through those crayfish roll cards I mentioned earlier, talk about monitoring. And then there are a lot of other strategies we step you through. Using traps is a great way to collect data. Usually put them out the night before. Um, and allow some time overnight. Since crayfish are nocturnal, you can get some good data with traps out overnight. You can also just go out and start turning over rocks and creeks, or you can use a net. We use kick nets sometimes to stir up the benthic layer and just get those macroinvertebrates moving enough so you can collect them easier. And we step you through a lot of different strategies for collecting crayfish in the field. And then if you do that, we really would love to see the data that you can submit through the website. It works with iNaturalist. And this is all part of the crayfish study that you all are doing. And um, you'll learn how to use the dip nets, seine nets, traps. Natalia did a training with some colleagues recently about this, and I think they're hoping to do it again. So stay tuned about that. They'll go over different ways to identify the local species, both native and invasive, and how to share that data. So here they are. They've got some nice photos. They really step you through the process. We like to take photos so that once you share what species it is, we can, confirm that information. We've had some cases out here in Oregon where somebody will report, oh, they found a rusty crayfish right outside Portland, and we had no idea they were anywhere near that. And so I contacted this educator. Got a photo. They were supposed to submit photos. They hadn't done that yet, but we got the photo, and Eric Larson helped us confirm that. Thankfully, it was not rusty crayfish. We didn't need to freak out and send the the team in right away. It was just a little different looking native crayfish, and so that's some of the benefits of doing this type of research and getting photos is that data can be easily shared. And if we do find an invasion, it can be addressed. So we have these data collection sheets you can use if you're in the field. You can also submit the data right through the website. So here's an example of a success story. This is something that Dr. Eric Larson, who's with us today, helped with out in Idaho. One of the teachers we had trained, Jamie Morton, through the crayfish study, took her students out doing the crayfish study, and they found red swamp crayfish right next to the Snake River. And through their work, working with scientists that were local, they were able to remove all of them. If they had been there for, even a few months longer, it's quite likely that they would have been in the Snake River. It's very important salmon and trout habitat, endangered species there. It would have been a complete disaster. And so having these community scientists out there, we sometimes say citizen scientists too, but I've been using the term community scientists because it works great for non-citizens too. Everybody can be out collecting data, sharing it, and we've had some other discoveries like this too. Down in Southern Oregon, they're finding some more invasive species, for instance, and so it's been very powerful for the kids to know that they can make these discoveries that have a huge impact. And this even got published thanks to the support of Eric Larson, and the kids became famous. It was picked up by PBS and a lot of other local news outlets, and folks love these kinds of stories. So here they are. This is the crew from Lewiston High School and their teacher, Jamie Morton, with one of those troublemaker crayfish they found. And so I wanted to mention this one, and Eric Larson's with us. So, Eric, can you share this super exciting research that was just published?
Yeah, this has been really exciting to have this out. I've worked on these crayfish since my PhD in Seattle, and so we had a new two new species descriptions come out in about the last week and a half, or maybe
Hmm.
2 weeks, and
Yeah.
this doubles the crayfish native to Washington State and British Columbia at the moment, and uh, certainly things that are good to have students or people looking for that aren't super widespread or abundant as well. And that we can also, it's nice to voucher at museums or do genetic sequencing, but these are also organisms that we can get towards species IDs with morphology or photographs too. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, Eric. I've been mentioning this to folks. I was at a conference just recently, and I talked about this discovery. And some of the folks were on a reservation out there in the Okanagan Plateau, and crayfish are an important first food. If you folks weren't aware of that. I learned from our indigenous partners that especially at the end of winter, when other food sources weren't as abundant, crayfish really got them through the last of winter. And so they were just super excited that they have a new species there. They told me they had seen crayfish like this before, and they were just thrilled to know that it is actually another species. They can get quite big, they were telling me too. Great food source and just so interesting. And you never know once you start looking out there what you're going to find. And we used to say it was mostly just one species through most of the Northwest, the signal crayfish, and now we know it's many more than that. Super exciting work. Thanks, Eric. Another lesson to make you all aware of is the competing crayfish game. With this one, the students play the role of different species, and there's cards that you can use, or you can pick whichever species you find most interesting. And we usually set up a big lake, which is a rope, just in a circle, or if you're close to another lake that has a different shape, you can make that shape. And then you've got different colored beans. We usually use like kidney beans, lima beans, pinto beans, different types. And then the species will collect different types. Crayfish can collect all the color beans because they can eat most food sources. But then we kind of stack the deck for the invasive species. So it starts out with the natives and things are kind of in balance. You can record that data, graph it over time. And you bring in the invasives, and all of a sudden, everything kind of goes out of whack, and the native species are impacted, and the food resources are impacted. And so it's a very powerful kinesthetic way for the students to realize the impacts of the invasive species. The next lesson gets into crayfish as an indicator species. So we have another scenario here where the students basically simulate. Okay, I'm automatically going through some slides here. I'm not sure why. But basically, just know that there's another scenario in there for lesson 7. And the students solve the mystery of the disappearing crayfish. They develop plans. There's a rubric to go with that. They can create a visual plan to kind of show how they're addressing these problems of the declining crayfish population. And if you weren't aware, they're also a very good indicator species. So if we find crayfish, we know that the water is at least somewhat clean. They do need to get oxygen from the water and live in that environment. And so they're a great way to talk about water quality. And then the students can basically be developing water quality improvement plans in this lesson. Lesson 8 gets into mapping. So we suggest different ways to make maps. They can be mental maps, they can be bird's eye view maps of your field sites you go to. We bring in GIS, and there's a simple version of GIS, ArcGIS Online, that we've used out here through the River Mile that's worked out really well. And so the students can create a map of their field site. And then also they can compare data through iNaturalist and the Find My Crayfish programs that are being used out there in the Great Lakes area. So a lot of different ways that the students can be using maps we step you through in that lesson. And then we also have a just highlight of a GIS specialist, a young woman that I know that loves her career in GIS. So that's a way to integrate careers, which we're finding is a very powerful way to engage students and motivate them to care about science and learning about all this if they can have career possibilities out of it. So here's some of the different maps they can be manipulating and using with real crayfish data and other data. And then anytime you're doing a project with real data collection out in the field doing place-based learning, we really suggest that you do presentations to the community. This is something I've seen over and over again, how powerful it is. The students get excited about what they're working on. When they share that enthusiasm with the public, now all of a sudden everybody's excited and they're just amazing spokespeople for these important issues like the spread of invasive species and all these other concepts that are all interrelated. We also know from the research that if we present about something, if we teach about it, then we're really going to know it. We remember 90% or so of what we teach about compared to maybe only 10% of what we read. And so it's a very powerful way to learn as well as to be teaching the community about these issues. So that's the last lesson in the curriculum. And you can download it all. I believe there's a link in chat, or there soon will be, right on the invasive crayfish site. And Natalia is a great point of contact. They're doing a pilot program with the new curriculum now. So reach out to Natalia if you'd like to be part of that. Her email address is right there. I think she might also be putting that in chat. And I'm available as a resource too. I'll add my email address as well. It's rick at engagingeverystudent.com. And I'm still a teacher in my heart and soul, but I do work with a lot of other partners to create educational programs. So let me know. I know we have at least one participant from Missouri today. If you want a Missouri focused document of your local crayfish species or anything, just let me know. I'd be happy to customize anything for you. And with that, I think, well, let me just mention a couple more quick things. If you'd like to get a little more training through the River Mile Network, we have this crayfish observation module that we link to from the curriculum. And I can drop a link to that in chat in a minute. And you can just kind of step through it. It takes a couple hours. You get certified, and you'll know more about the collection techniques and everything that way. So thanks so much, everybody. And I'll turn it over to y'all for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Rick. That was amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. And if you'd be willing, I would love it if you would turn on your camera and microphone and we could just kind of have a conversation. I always love to know who's out there. No worries if you're shy, that's fine. But if you do have a camera and you don't mind sharing, I think other folks would like to be able to see who's out there too. And if you have a question, maybe you could just say who you are, where you're from, and ask away. Are there any questions?
I
Just chat. You can just tell me who you are and where you're from. That'd be fun too. Or Eric could talk for hours about all the amazing crayfish stuff he's working on.
have one question, if that's okay.
Yes.
Stealing some time from everyone else. But I wanted to know if there are any activities in the curriculum that you're particularly excited about, or that tends to be students' favorites. I don't know if you've gotten any response from. I'm sure you got a lot of response from the students in the schools that implement the curriculum in the Pacific Northwest. But have there been any specific activities that they really seem to enjoy?
Yeah, they love the competing crayfish game because it's kinesthetic. They're running around in the circle. They're picking up, the different beans, and it's always a hit. There's a lot of laughter. You can bring in different parts of the game if you have a little bit more time. So we usually have a fisherman, like the teacher will be the fisherman, and if any of the crayfish are drawing too much attention to themselves, if they're like roughhousing or whatever, then the fisherman taps you and you're basically eaten and you have to go out of the circle. And so that's always fun for laughs. And then you can bring in other layers of the game too. We suggest that towards the end. where there's like, kleptoparasitism, where the invasive crayfish can actually steal from the other species, and so the kids that are invasive, really love that part. It's a way to teach that concept. And so anything that's active with the students, they're going to enjoy. Anything that's art infused, they really enjoy. So that's why we have them, create their own creatures using, hands-on materials, or just creating a model of a crayfish with clay. It actually doesn't take a lot of time, and you can get a big 25-pound thing of clay like quite cheap to keep a whole class going. And in this little 20, 30 minute activity, they've created this crayfish model that's super memorable. And then they can also be labeling, and you're still integrating writing. When you add annotations, not only the name of structures but also what those structures do to help the crayfish survive. They're doing a lot of critical thinking, they're doing a lot of writing. And so that's kind of what keeps me excited after over 30 years of doing this, is just like how to fully engage those kids, whether it's, running around with a simulation, or there's the scenarios in the game too. They really like that, like working together in groups. That's something that happens in schools somewhat, but in my opinion, not enough. We know that the learning process is very social, that, humans are probably the most social organism there is. And yet, if you look at the average classroom, so much of it is just like sitting at a desk. And it's really sad when they see that, because that's not how the human brain was designed to learn. We were designed to be doing active things together socially. We're also designed to do it outdoors. So that's the other thing that the kids love, is if you can do the field studies, do the crayfish collection in a creek, make sure you get your principal to sign off and make sure they're okay with, a little extra risk. It's not too dangerous if you don't go above like the knee on the water and all. There's things you can do to make it safe. And then it's so memorable. It's so much fun. There's just no substitute for field studies too, if you can work it into your program. So those are kind of a few of the highlights. One of the reasons why I love doing what I do is to just kind of try to create those opportunities for the students to be more engaged than just kind of worksheets. Because, we do have some worksheets too. They have their place, but it's got to be kind of, doing it, even if they do something like labeling the crayfish diagram, we usually suggest they do it with a partner so they can kind of work together, talk about the different structures. If they, try to write the functions of those structures, that's, very next generation science standards. And they're doing it together in a social way. It's a lot of fun. Then they can color their diagrams too. So you're integrating the arts, and just be thinking as you go through these activities, like how can I keep the kids like fully engaged beyond just like doing a worksheet? Like even if you have a worksheet, it can be a lot more than just that.
That is completely understandable. You really want to find activities that are outside of the kind of traditional classroom setting where you're sitting at a desk in a chair. So yeah, that's exciting. We have some questions in the chat. If
Okay.
I'll go ahead and read you the first one here. What was the most significant challenge you had when developing this curriculum? Student psychology fascinates me, especially when you think about game theory and education in tandem.
Yeah, coming up with something like a simulation is a challenge. I'm always trying to build on what's come before. So the National Park Service actually had a game called Land of Many Opportunists. It just brought in fish, and we're like, we can adapt this and work it in with the invasive crayfish species. And so, some of the most challenging aspects were really just kind of working with partners, building from what's been done. Helps an awful lot. Of course, we had permission to do that. And then just working with scientists like Eric Larson has just been like completely, I don't know, what's the right word for you, Eric? Just priceless. Like as questions arose, I was trying to write all this science that I was not an expert in. So just to be able to consult with Eric and Julian Olden at the University of Washington, his former supervisor over there, and other scientists, Dr. Jim Eakins out of Idaho, that could just make sure that all the science was completely accurate. When we wanted to do the species over in the Great Lakes area, we had scientists out there. I can see we have Katie with us here today too. Hi, Katie, and other folks that just kind of knew that science, and that's always something that's takes a lot of time to make sure that all the research is correct. And we have review of many experts, because it's very important to us to make sure if we say something in a curriculum that it's accurate. So that's some of the harder parts, but it's all the power of partnerships, right? You don't have to know everything yourself. If you're a teacher that's never taught crayfish before, just keep in touch. I've been doing this for a number of years now, and I'm not Eric Larson, but I do know a fair amount of things, and I'd be happy to share what I know. And if I'm not sure about something, then I ask Eric. And so it's just this great ecosystem of sharing. And of course, you have Natalia out there in the Great Lakes, and Katie, and other people that can help. Carter's there too, as part of the project. You have a really nice team that can support and do some of the harder questions about science.
Thank you. We have another question in the chat from Christy
Yeah.
Mitchell. And again, feel free to, if you guys want to turn on your cameras and ask these questions in person,
Mhm.
in the spirit of human socialization, that'd be great too. I know it's through Zoom, but any kind of form of contact is great. But this question asks, I teach ninth grade environmental science. Have you done this with high school students?
Absolutely. It's perfect for high school, in my opinion. It works great with young kids, but we've had a lot of high schools out. The middle school and high school kids, if you stick them in a desk all day, it just does not work. And I've been in a lot of high school classes recently where the kids just are not engaged. When you get them outdoors, doing these field studies and all, they are just so alive. It's meaningful. If they're kind of suffering with that, like, why are we doing this sort of thing? This solves that problem because these invasive crayfish, the native crayfish, they're very important, and the work they're doing really matters. And so I think it's perfect with ninth grade. I taught ninth grade for a number of years too, and they can be a little challenging. I don't know, Chrissy, if you've noticed that, but you got all the hormones, you got all the like energy that needs to get worked out. So if you get them moving outdoors or doing these games and stuff, like it's just so much better. So yeah, I think every lesson in the curriculum works really well with ninth grade.
Great, thank
With
you.
with second, I'll just mention if you're an elementary person, some of the lessons, you have to scale it back, a little bit, like the competing crayfish game. I've only done it with like grades 4 and up. I think for the young kids, it might be a little much. So you just kind of know your students and what you can do with the different lessons. And I think Barbara had a question.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I'm Barbara Evans. I'm up in northern Michigan,
Mhm.
Lake Superior State University, and
Nice.
pretty new to crayfish. I am an aquatic ecologist, but more on the fish side, and we've just recently been trying to introduce crayfish into aquaponics, and
Oh
I'm
yeah.
also trying to introduce them. I used them in one of my physiology classes.
Mhm.
Um, But the question I have is trying to find information on the sort of not just the life cycle, but the environmental limits of the native crayfish. There's lots of stuff on other species, but and then trying to look up information. The names have changed recently on a lot of the
Mm.
species, so trying to find the literature about, what are the optimal temperatures if you're trying to breed them, or like people, how often do they molt? It's like, I don't know, they just keep.
Yeah.
And what are the, the better foods? I'm curious if there's sources of information to really look at culturing them and
Great
you mentioned
questions.
that the indigenous communities would use them as food. Were there particular species that they would use? Or was that, all northern crayfish in general?
Out here in the Northwest, I know they were using whatever they could find out there. Crayfish, freshwater mussels were also important first foods. So, yeah, pretty much if it was out in the creeks, it was edible. They were eating it. But maybe I don't know, Eric or maybe somebody else from the Midwest could speak to the other questions more.
Yeah, from the Upper Peninsula, you would have virile crayfish as a native, and among some others that are a little less widespread or abundant. And the name change. A lot of the literature on that species will be under Orconectes virilis rather than Faxonius, but you can kind of search for both. The taxonomic update on that happened in about 2017. Viral, viral is like the most common thing that you might be keeping is moderately well studied. There's an okay number of life history papers about it, about how fast they grow and how many eggs they carry and when they molt. And we had sort of a life history review paper from 2013, which is now 12 years out of date. But I can send that as a link. And
Okay.
the person I know who really knows the kind of temperature limits was Jacob Westhoff in Missouri, who was on the call earlier. And he had reviewed, the state of knowledge on crayfish temperature preferences and tolerances maybe in 2016. And if you have library access at Lake Superior, I can put links for both of those here
Yeah,
in the
certainly.
chat.
Okay.
Um, but definitely Jacob Viral with some of the databases from those papers, you could get some good life history and temperature data for that species that
Okay.
sometimes it's on Ontario, sometimes it's Wisconsin, sometimes it's non-native populations out west, but the most common native you're going to encounter has okay. Most of our crayfish are a little neglected for some kind of basic biology like that, but virile,
Mm.
it's not hopeless. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Sure. And
And
one more thing I'll point out is a link to that free virtual training I mentioned. If you'd like, you can just kind of sign up and step yourself through at your own pace, and you'll have a little more just confidence to go out and collect reliable data. The species we mentioned are the ones you find more in the Northwest, but you can just use the species guide in the Great Lakes curriculum to kind of sub in for that.
And Barbara, I also added Jacob Westhoff's email there if you wanted to reach out to him regarding your crayfish water temperature questions.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think they like it cold, right? Like cold water, like probably 45 to low 50s, maybe. What do you think, Eric?
I think Viral wants moderately warm temperatures for
Okay.
optimal growth and definitely growth of the young of the year. Where
Hmm.
Viral's non-native out west, you lose it with elevation up into the Rocky
Hmm.
Mountains or Cascades, where when you I don't know. I think when you start getting into things that are like trout water, you start losing virile crayfish if you're in Montana or
Got it.
Wyoming. Uh, but I collect them most in like lakes in the UP or northern Wisconsin where, those are lakes that yeah, sunfish kind of
A little warmer.
warm water fish assemblage lakes more than other places. Yeah.
Cool. I always learn a lot hanging out with you, Eric. It's great. And the rest of you too. This has been so much fun. Great to connect and talk about crayfish.
But I'm bad with like Viral for knowing like what they might need to trigger like reproduction. Like I think they
Mm.
probably reproduce in the fall or winter and carry eggs over winter that hatch in the spring. And what they might need is like a temperature cue that initiates reproduction as opposed to maybe a light cue. I don't know. I love catching crayfish and I am terrible at keeping them alive in the lab. So you want to use no advice from me about keeping crayfish. Yeah.
That's really interesting though, because we will be out collecting, like let's say in February or something, and we will find if we find a female, very often she does have eggs, and I wondered if she's kind of carrying over the whole winter, and it sounds like that's probably true with signal crayfish.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, we've had pretty good luck keeping them alive. And we were told the similar thing that they probably had eggs. And so we separated all the females, but they didn't cooperate. So
Mm.
we're waiting to get the males and then see if we could match them up. But we were curious about, are there certain temperatures where you do you want to introduce them beforehand, or they get tired of each other or something if you have them in there at the wrong temperature? I don't know anything about.
Crayfish reproduction is another super interesting topic. I know we're just about out of time, but I learned recently that the female signal crayfish will challenge the males, and the only way the male gets to mate with her is if he's able to flip her over, basically. So it's like Fight
Ah.
Club between the genders, and that's how he shows how tough he is. So just another fascinating thing about crayfish.
Amazing. What a great discussion. I know that it's already at the end of the hour, so if you have to leave, you can do so. But if you wanted to stay on and continue this discussion, ask any more questions, um, I'm okay to stay on.
Sure.
So if anyone would like to stay on and ask any more questions, please go ahead. Um, yeah. But if not, thanks again so much for being here. And thanks, Rick, for the wonderful presentation and for your
Anytime.
time and dedication and collaboration with us. It's been a pleasure working with both you and Krista on this, and just seeing it finally come to fruition in the Great Lakes area is so rewarding. So thank you again for developing this amazing curriculum and just for being here.
My pleasure. And thank you for reminding me to do a shout out to Krista. I couldn't do anything without my wife, Krista. She is the best researcher, writer, editor. Like you're really good too, Natalia, but she helps with all of that kind of stuff. And so everything is very much a team effort. And of course, having Eric and other scientists like really couldn't do it without all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.